a bad name. We didn't always have a bad name until pieces of shit like this, they get shotguns and start shooting guards in the face or the back. How the fuck you gonna shoot an unarmed guard in the fucking back, dude? What the fuck is that? How are you gonna get shot at by a guard who's emptying the cylinder like right at you because you just robbed him last week and he hates you?
They had no plans on stopping their
Don't return to the scene of the crime.
robberies anytime soon, and they were willing to kill as many people as necessary in order to make it happen, even if it was just killing people in order to grab another getaway car. Which, by the way, I was thinking about this reading on the case. It seems kind of counterintuitive to steal cars from people who have guns, right? Like, why would you go to a shooting range or an area people are shooting at in order to steal their car? Wouldn't you want to be somewhere
without guns? Yeah, people who don't have guns.
But then, if they're planning on shooting that person, then it's probably good to go to an area that is already pre-established as having gunfire at it, or letting the person shoot for a little bit. That way, if a bystander hears a gunshot, they won't think anything of it. Anyway, C1 is doing...
Yeah, look, I like how he followed it through. That's kind of like that. That's how a psychopath would look at it. Well, if you're going to fire off a gun inside of city limits, the shooting range is probably the one place you could do that without pulling pigs by rote, yeah. And I wouldn't have thought about it like that. I think I'm not going anywhere where there's guns. I'm not going to rob anybody who has guns. No, they'll just shoot me. That's my thing about the bank. I would never rob a bank, not like that. I would do the note thing. I would never do an armed robbery of a fucking bank. You know what fucking happens. They chase you for the rest of your fucking life. It's not that it matters what you make it out of the bank with. It could even be a lot of money, like 50 grand or something. It's not worth it. They fucking chase you for the rest of your life. You have to like drop your family and move. You don't have to do these things. But if you wish to remain free, the minute that your deadbeat ass pulls 50 grand out of nowhere, everybody in your life is going to know that. They've got to either be silenced or you've got to separate yourself from them. And that's what they do. They separate these criminals. You ever seen a First 48 or whatever? The first thing they do is separate from their families for like 9 years, and then they eventually call their family and they get busted. You know? This what always happens.
Everything.
No, there was a really good show I was obsessed with for a while. I Almost Got Away with It. I fucking love that show. I Almost Got Away with It. I should download I Almost Got Away with It. That's a really fucking genuinely good show. Criminals sit down in the fucking prisons. It lasted like 11 seasons or something like that. They sit down in the prisons like whilst they're doing life or whatever. And they're like, I almost got away with it. And here I'm going to tell you my fucking story. And it's insane and blah, blah, blah. I was really high on cocaine. And the problem was that I was up for 5 days. It wasn't that I was running a gang or that I robbed this guy or that he came back for more or whatever, or that I was fucking his girlfriend or anything like that. It was that I was up for 5 days on cocaine. Don't stay up for 5 days on cocaine. That's what they always say too. At the end of I Almost Got Away with It, they always say something stupid like, don't stay up for 5 days on cocaine. Don't try to escape prison. And if you do run, don't call your family.
They can to try to catch these guys.
Yeah, you can't run. You can't run. Nobody successfully runs from these people. No, I mean some people get away with it, yeah. But statistically, it's like less than 0.01% or something of people actually get away from these like 25-year bids and stuff. If they have been convicted in a court of law, they don't get away from it. They can run for all of their lives if they want, but they can't get away from it. They can't talk to their families. They can't live in the same country anymore. You know, and so like goddamn so okay, so you want to be a criminal, that's one thing, but then you want to be a dumb criminal who leaves a trail of bodies and fucking robs people in blind Dade County, Miami. Got to be the worst goddamn place in the fucking world almost. In the middle of the day, you're robbing 2 banks. Not just one bank, but 2. You're robbing 2 banks in the middle of Dade County in the middle of the day. You're the most brazen piece of shit criminal I've ever even heard of before, really. And you give us all a bad name.
Driving around town looking for either
setting off smoke grenades in your fucking jack-off fantasy, your Republican M16, M1 Mini or whatever the fuck fantasy that you're living, where you think that you're fucking Miami Vice or whatever. It's fucking insane. I hate people like this.
the Monte Carlo.
They give people like me a bad name. They really do.
And just writing down the license plate numbers of white Ford F-150s.
Yeah, leaving like, boy, when I think really, really conspicuous cars, white Ford F-150, that's a conspicuous car, kind of. It's going to stand out. F-150s are huge. They're fucking huge. Everybody in the ghetto is like, where did you get that F-150 from when they see it? It's this expensive, big, $40,000 truck. Where the fuck did you losers get an F-150 from?
You see
This stuff matters, too.
in suspicion.
You see a couple of hicks rolling around with like an F-150 and shit, and they look like they just killed somebody or robbed a bank or something. You're like, what the fuck? Like, where the fuck did you idiots get that thing? And it makes you stand out. They call that hood rich. You don't want to look hood rich. You don't roll around in a white F-150 robbing people in motherfucking Dade County. That sounds like the purview of a fucking, a lifer. That sounds like the purview of a lifer.
Places. The idea being, if you have a bunch of different plate numbers for white Ford F-150s.
Yeah, and he's right. This is an easy crime, though. I used to mess with this when I was like 13 years old. I stole a car when I was like 13, and I made off for Cali because I really didn't like my life, and I was just not willing to do it anymore. I didn't like my life where I lived. I really liked what my family had become, and my father was gone, and I was just like, fuck this shit. I'm the poorest person that I know. I have the shittiest life that anybody that I know has. I don't have any friends because I wasn't born here. I didn't come up here. These aren't my fucking friends. I don't know these people. I just came here. I just moved here. Darkest time of my life. So I just stole the soccer mom minivan from my mom. It just full blown took off on the money I was gonna make selling my Nintendo 64. And I brought my friend Steve with me when I went. And we messed with plates quite a bit because we knew that we had to get to Cali. And the only way you're going to get to Cali is really good license plates. So before we stole the car, we removed license plates off of minivans so that we could freely drive without, so how people have like a front and a back license plate. So I went around town when I was like 12 and I stole license plates to make sure that we can make it to Cali with a stolen car. I mean, is it any wonder that I ended up who I am or whatever? Do people normally have stories like this? Yeah, when I was 12 years old, I rolled around town stealing fucking license plates. So when I stole my mom's car and ran away from home, they wouldn't roll me for having a stolen vehicle on my way to Cali. It's shit. So I stole like five sets of license plates from 5 pairs of minivans. And so when they caught me running away from home, I had like 5 fucking... My mother's like, you are crazy. You are so stupid. You stole people's license plates so you could drive to California without being arrested. And I was like, yeah, that's why I have... When they caught me, I had 5 fucking license plates in the back of the car. And my intention I was like, yeah, it'll probably take us about 4 or 5 days of careful driving to not get pulled over by state highway patrol who understand that 12-year-olds are driving a minivan. And we were really scared of this, so we had like blocked the windows. We were like, we can't let the people see us. They'll understand that we're 12-year-olds driving a minivan. We were such assholes. I was Dennis the goddamn Menace. I full blown, I stole blinders for the car so we could roll blinders down. Like, they sold these blinder things that stop the sun, and I stole those from the fucking auto parts place down the street so that we could like full blown conceal the fact that we were 12 years old from the general public, so we could drive to California in a stolen car. And we were going to steal gas on the way, just fill the tank and drive off. And all this other shit, I didn't know how to drive when I stole that car. I was 12 years old. I just figured that out. I've crashed that motherfucker. I crashed it like 4 times. I crashed into a pole. I didn't know how to drive that thing. You know, I was like the barefoot bandit. I had no fucking idea how to drive that car. I was 12 years old. I had never driven a car before. So yeah, it took me like 45 minutes of stumbling around the Ralph's parking lot or whatever, trying to figure out how to pull out of the parking lot. I did. Like my friend Steve was so stressed out. He like had his hands over his eyes because he couldn't watch it anymore as I stumbled through learning how to drive a car instantly overnight. like Neo, right? Oh, I know how to drive a car now. No, I didn't. I did not know how to drive a car. So then I drove out into the city and I drove all over Omaha when I was like 12 years old. And no, I'm not proud of this, but I mean, it is a true story. I don't know why I was this crazy. I just was this crazy. It's just stupid. I was fucking stupid. I convinced him that we could do it. I stole the license plates. I blocked our faces so they couldn't tell that we were 12 years old. I lied to the fucking video game store clerk and gave him a false name and a false alias to try and get out of him to alerting my family that where I was. And when he asked me who I was, I told him my name is Jackson McBriggs, and he fucking laughed in my face because I was 12 years old, and I had stolen a car, and I was lying to him about my name, so I could sell him my Nintendo 64 for $80, so we could afford to eat crappy McDonald's food as we drove to California. I mean, it's just fucking crazy. It's like, you know, I don't like having these stories. I just do have these stories. It's so stupid. I hate criminals.
You can send them into the DMV, find out who that vehicle is registered.
You can do all types of things with license plates. You know, oh yeah.
To.
You can steal a car, go find the same model of car somewhere else, steal their license plates, and then you don't have a stolen car anymore, do you? You've got legit plates on what appears to be a legit minivan. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever. In my case, it was the Soccer Mom minivan. When the 12-year-old showed up with the Soccer Mom minivan, the game store clerk called my parents. I love this story. It is true. And he was pissed off, too. He was pissed off that I lied to him about my name. He's like, your name isn't this. Your name is blah, blah. And your fucking parents are coming here right now. And you're lucky I don't call the fucking pigs for Grand Theft Auto. You know what Grand Theft Auto it is, you little shithead video game fiend. So just, like, don't make your life Grand Theft Auto right now. You're lucky I don't call the pigs on your ass. That's what he said to me. He laughed in my face when I said Jackson McBriggs. He just laughed in my face. Because I'm this 12-year-old trying to bullshit this, like, 40-year-old dude. And he laughed in my face when I said Jackson McBriggs. He full-blown laughed in my face. I think they were Mortal Kombat characters. I didn't even know enough about the world to like. I was using Mortal Kombat. Yeah, right. I think I was saying Jax McBriggs. I think is the name of the Mortal Kombat character. So I told the game store clerk who ratted me out to my parents when I stole the car and ran off to California. Or tried to run off to California and shit. He fucking laughed in my face when I told him my false alias name. It was like a McLovin moment. He fucking laughed in my face, and he was like, it really was like a McLovin moment. He was like, what did you say, you fucking idiot? And he laughed in my face. He was like, what did you say, you fucking idiot? And I was like, I said Jackson McBriggs, and he laughed in my fucking face. I've never been more mortified in my fucking life. He just full-blown laughed in my face, and immediately knew the jig was up. The jig was up. I wasn't going to get away from this. It was fucking annoying. They didn't do shit to us, by the way. We stole that minivan. We stole license plates and all types of shit. But we were 12. They didn't do shit to us. They didn't call the cops. They didn't, you know, my mother was mortified and she gave me hell. But I mean, but the world did not do anything to us for stealing that car. It was insane. But I mean, I was 12 years old. I mean, I didn't like the ghetto of Omaha, you know. It wasn't fun. My cousins were fucked up. You know, it just wasn't really that good of a time.
and then you could show the images of those people in a lineup to Jose.
But I mean, yeah, the license plate thing is a criminal secret that a lot of people don't know, but it's a very, very simple one if you think about it, right? If you steal a car, or if you are worried about being pulled over, you can just go take that stolen car, drive around busy grocery store parking lots till you find the same model of car that you either stole or you're trying to conceal. You steal one license plate off of that car and you put it on the back of your car, and then you're no longer a criminal in the eyes of the pigs. You're just that soccer mom. And if they run the place, they see legit plate. They don't know shit. The owner won't know shit. The owner won't even know that their license plate has either been stolen or replaced or whatever. They won't even notice for weeks and weeks and stuff. And yes, I have used this to elude the police a lot of times. I have definitely stolen plates in my lifetime to pull the wool over pigs' eyes. For when we did particularly nasty things,
Indirectly. So in late April, early March, the C1 division did this, but it would take some time for the report to come back from the DMV. At this point, the C1 division had...
And I've been aware of this since I was 12 years old. I've been manipulating it since I was 12 years old. Good little hood rat fucking piece of shit criminal should know about license plates and what they can do. People talk about getting a brand new identity or getting a brand new ID or that kind of thing. You don't need a brand new ID. The only thing that anybody ever fucking actually catalogs you with is your license plates. If you get brand new license plates, you're probably fine. I mean, the ID helps too, yeah, but that's way harder and way more dangerous too. But like, you can always say, oh, I don't have an ID, you'll have to just run me. But then they don't care about that. But the license plates are always an issue, and they run those for fun. The stoplights run your license plates for fun. The stoplights in busy metropolitan cities, they literally read your fucking license plate with AI and they catalog that motherfucker. They literally do. And so like license plates are a bigger problem for a criminal than identification is, kind of. And so yeah, far before I ever think about getting a fake ID, I'm thinking about how do I get my license plates that are attached to me off of this stolen and or fucked up vehicle or whatever, dirty vehicle, whatever, right? How do I get the connection to me off of this? License plates are a lot better than identification cards. Identification cards draw attention. License plates don't. So yeah, you want to hide from the fucking pigs? First thing you better be thinking is your license plates, because that's how they actually get you. That's what okay. You want to know how I lost my last car? I was parked in the American motel, and the fucking pigs, they go to all the hotels in Denver, and they roll all of the license plates in the fucking parking lots to make sure that the cars aren't stolen by drug dealers. And so they rolled me in the American fucking parking lot because my car was rented. It was a rented car. So they just rolled me because I had a rented car in a hotel. They rolled me. I caught possession. Motherfucker, I paid for the motel room. I paid for the rental car. I'm an American. I pay taxes. It's my business if I'm parked at a motel. As a law-abiding American, I wasn't a law-abiding American, but as far as they're concerned, I'm innocent until proven guilty. I'm a law-abiding American parked in a motel, sitting in my motel room doing nothing illegal. And it went from that to them towing my fucking car in front of me and throwing the cuffs on me. It was so stupid. For parking in a fucking... Yeah, that's something a criminal won't ever tell you, but I will. Don't park in the fucking hotels. Don't park in the hotel ever. Take a taxi to the hotel. I learned the hard way.
Establish some commonality in the unknown bandits' banditry. They always hit banks on Friday, seemingly because that is when the money trucks made their drops. And the time between robberies would be shorter or longer depending on how much money they took.
They're
Remember the time
not
that they didn't rob
scared.
anymore.
I would say I don't see fear in these guys. They're like having shootouts with dudes with revolvers and shit in the streets of Dade. Like, these guys are not scared of these pigs, and I gotta get it, like, okay, if there's one strong thing that you should have as a criminal, it should be the complete disrespect of the authority, you know. And I see that here really strong. These guys were not afraid to rob fools in broad daylight and Dade County, fucking Miami and shit. You couldn't pay me enough money to do something that crazy and fucking self-destructive. These guys have like zero fear, which is fucking weird. It's just weird when you see zero fear in born losers like this. They killed their wives. They fucking robbed the insurance company for the fucking the fucking insurance payment and shit, and used it to fund a Republican fucking cell of nuts. And then they got in a shootout with the police in the end. Fucking insane. Where's your fear? You don't have fear of the pigs? I'm sorry, but I don't fear the fucking pigs. I just fear. I was taught very well at a young age that the helicopter lights are as bright as the sun. How in the hell do you think you can run? You can't.
Banks for a couple months.
That rhymes for a reason. That's Coolio. Like, you know what I'm saying? And he's right about that. How in the hell do you think you can run when the helicopter light's as bright as the sun? And I've been conscious of that for all of my life, since I was like 13 years old, since I heard that song, is you can't run from these people. That's not a viable option. If you're Lupin the Third, you can live that life of being a thief and disappearing from the fucking fuzz all the time, and you can be like a master thief if you want to. But that shit isn't fun. You can't talk to your fucking family. You can't spend the money. You're constantly traveling in countries that you don't want to be in because they're not your country, you know? And all these other things about being Lupin the Third that just isn't really that good. It's not Castle Cagliostro. It's just not. It's more like you can't talk to your family. You can't spend any money. You can't go home to your own country. You have no identity anymore. And the identity that you do have is stolen or fabricated. And yeah, you couldn't pay me to be that much of a loser. There's not enough money in the world.
Was when they got $50,000.
Worth your reputation, you know?
But at the last robbery on March the 19th, they only got $8,000, meaning that another robbery was probably going to happen soon. Because of this, C1 determined
because they have cocaine habits in Miami.
That on April the 11th, 1986, there was probably going to be another robbery. So they were going to do something called a rolling stakeout. Basically, they were going to have several FBI agents scattered around southern Miami where all of the robberies took place, and they were going to case various banks or bank trucks and see if anything were to happen. And even if they're not at the bank where a robbery is taking place, they will be in the area to respond to one. So on that morning of April the 11th, 14 FBI agents broke up into 11 different cars and began their patrols of southern Miami. I can't really do this amount of time justice as much as like Ed Morales does in his telling of events. He goes into great detail about how jovial the tone was between everyone that day, how they were excited to catch the bad guys, but no one really thought, no one knew what would happen next. The morning started out casual. People took their positions at various banks around town. They radioed into each other what they were doing. Someone said they needed to go to the bathroom. Someone said they'd be out of service for a while. Everything was normal until 9:30 a.m. Agents Grogan and Dove, the same ones who interviewed Jose, and Grogan, the same one who made the connection about Jose in the first place, was parked at the Barnett Shopping Center that had a bank attached to it.
Oh,
By coincidence,
no!
There was a local...
And the wall came down, boom, boom, all the way to hell. Never saw them when they're coming, never saw them when they fell. And the walls came down, boom, boom, all the way to hell. That's the Traveling Wilburys. It's Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, which Beatle? It's John Lennon? I can't remember. Let's go look. The Traveling Wilburys were Roy Orbison, Tom Petty. What are you doing? You're so bad. Yeah. They're a super group. They were comprised of Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan is who I couldn't think of. I was thinking, and George Harrison. Sorry, Harrison. George Harrison, Tom Petty, Bob Dylan, and Roy Orbison. And and Jeff Lynne. Excuse me, and Jeff Lynne. They call this a super group. It was a super group, and yeah, I'm singing a song about a bunch of shit going down in a drug scene in New Jersey called Tweeter and the Monkey Man. Tweeter and the Monkey Man. Tweeter and the Monkey Man were hard up for cash. They stayed up all night selling cocaine and hash to an undercover cop who had a sister named Jan. For reasons unexplained, she loved the Monkey Man. Tweeter was a Boy Scout before she went to Vietnam and found out the hard way that nobody gives a damn. They knew that they'd find freedom just across that Jersey line, so they hopped into a stolen car and took Highway 99, and the walls came down, boom, wow, all the way to hell. Never saw them when they're standing, never saw them when they fell. The undercover cop never liked the Monkey Man. Even back in childhood, he wanted to see him in the can. Jan got married at 14 to a racketeer named Bill. She made secret calls to the Monkey Man from a mansion on the hill. It was out on Thunder Road. Tweeter at the wheel. They crashed into paradise. They could hear them tires squeal. The undercover cop pulled up and said, "Every one of you is a liar. If you don't surrender now, it's gonna go down to the wire." And the walls come down. Burn down.
A police officer also parked in the parking lot of the shopping center that morning. All of the FBI agents were in unmarked...
This is how it happens, too. They're not even on you. They're just sitting in the neighborhood waiting, because that's what their job is. It's actually not that crazy to assume that they're just sitting there waiting for a bank robbery, because that's what their job actually is. They like that. They like staking out because they think it's proactive and that they're doing their job and stuff. And so do we. We like it when they do stuff like stakeouts and actually go and try and catch the bad guy. You know, most of the time. We don't like entrapment, but we do like it when they're proactive about going and getting these guys off the street. So, you know, so it's not surprising to me that 15 fucking feds are just sitting there within a 16-block radius of the fucking places that these idiots keep robbing and coming back to over and over and over again, like the idiot criminals that they are. How many times have they returned to the scene of the crime? And remember, these guys have bodies on them. They've killed a child and their wives and shit. They have bodies on them, and they're doing stuff like getting in fucking shootouts with the fucking pigs.
Cars in order to not raise any suspicion. At 9:30 a.m., Grogan and Dove are sitting in their vehicle when all of a sudden a black two-door vehicle that might be a Monte Carlo...
It's going to be bad, isn't it? It's going to be really bad. At least 4 people are going to die and a bunch of people are going to go to jail. It's insane.
Drives into the parking lot, seemingly sees the police officer parked in the parking lot, and then drives away. Dove and Grogan think that's kind of weird and decide to start tailing it. They report to the other agents on the radio that they're following up on this lead, but again, as far as they know now, it's just...
By the way, we know that they have a weakness about this. It's very easy to listen to the police scanner. I used to do it when I would commit crimes. I would listen to the police scanner. It's not hard to do so. Anybody in the world can listen to the fucking police scanner. So yeah, one of the things about criminals that you'll never hear a criminal tell you, but I mean, it is true. Something you can do to be proactive about understanding whether or not you just set off all the pigs of your city is to listen in to the police scanner while you commit your crime, because it's a really easy way to figure out if 911 has been called.
Just a two-door black vehicle. Nothing can...
You can hear the 911, you can't hear the 911 call, but you can hear the dispatch send the pigs.
Conclusive yet. However,
and that is extremely valuable information for the criminal. And yeah, there has been a bunch of cases where we use it to just, you know, to full-blown elude the cops, because The cops, they broadcast kind of like Souls-like mobs. They broadcast every move that they do over that fucking those fucking radios of theirs. They broadcast everything they do.
1 minute later, at 9:31,
When I was bored, I was a taxi driver. I would sit at night, and I would put a police scanner on my cell phone, and I would listen to the dispatch of the taxi drivers and where they were going, and I would listen to the police and where they were going. And I mean, I learned so much about how really dumb the cops actually are. They kind of full-blown telegraph every move that they make so you can just freely stay away from them most of the time. If you just as long as you don't underestimate a bored pig. A bored pig will go really far.
1 a.m.
Just to prove that they did their job.
Grogan calls out that not only is it a
A
two-door
bored pig is really bad. You know, it's really bad for you. If you have a bored pig who's got nothing fucking better to do than to fuck with you, that's very bad. You don't want that.
black Monte Carlo, but it has the same license plate. I cannot properly describe how stupid that is. Like, yes, they thought they left Jose for dead in the Everglades, sure, but at this point, the license plate had been plastered on newspapers, it had been plastered on the news, the FBI were throwing NTJ 891 out everywhere to try to get some lead. And for these guys who are so down to steal everything, can you not just, like, pull a license plate out off a car in a parking lot? Like, why is that where you draw the line?
This is the difference between a smart criminal and a dumb criminal. A smart criminal will sit there. I used to use my cell phone. I would sit there dreaming up ways to get out of all of my problems. It didn't matter what I did because I was a criminal. So you just dream up ways to get out of all of your problems. And so a good criminal is not throwing smoke bombs to the police and trying to act all crazy with machine guns and stuff. A good criminal is somebody who answers the door. It says, yes, you can search the place. There's nothing here. I am not what you think I am. And I resent the implication. And then you let them search your house. And then when they find nothing, they leave. That's what police have always been in this country. That is the extent of their power. If they come with a beef and you did it, then they're going to get you. Most likely. You know, not always, but most likely. And so, you know, you just don't ever want to have a beef with them. It's that simple.
Someone in the head, no problem, but you won't bring a Phillips head screwdriver, I guess.
Yeah, at the age of 12, I knew better. I knew that even as I ran away from home, I would need the license plate. And it's weird that I as a 12-year-old was far more advanced than these morons. You know what I'm saying?
Another thing that annoys me so much. So many bank robbers that otherwise would have completely got away with it get arrested because of a license plate. There was the one in, I think it's Tacoma, Washington, where...
Yeah, they're just too dumb. They're smart enough to rob a bank, but they're too dumb to switch the plates. I've never understood it. It's this fallacy about crime. It's not a fallacy. It's a truism. Excuse me. It's a truism about criminals. They are dumb. They are fucking dumb. They're so dumb. Like a smart criminal is somebody who doesn't commit crime. He has somebody else do it.
Like 4 Army Rangers, like these super well-trained guys, performed like a perfectly executed bank robbery. They were in and out in 2 minutes. It was going great.
But then they let the plates on.
But they took the back license plate off of their
But not the front.
car, but they didn't take the front one off.
Oh no, so they had mismatching plates, which will aggro a pig so fucking fast. No, game ending. No, why? No.
So someone ID'd the car and then the police just drove to their house and arrested them. And there's
Yeah, like
that other one, what's her name? Cowboy Bob. I think what was her real name? Peggy Jo Tallis. Yeah. She was a robber who the police didn't even know they were looking for for like months, because she would do her robberies in a get-up to make her look like an old man. So the police thought they were looking for an old man, only to find out that it was a woman. And you know how they found out? Because she used her car with the plates on. Why are people... Okay.
Yeah, you're successfully masquerading as the opposite gender as you rob banks, but you didn't switch the plates, you fucking moron. And I'll tell you why. All they can think about is that 5 seconds as they commit the crime. They don't think about all the other things that must be taken into into consideration. There's a lot of things that must be taken into consideration when you consider doing crime. The first thing is did you leave fingerprints? Because if you left fingerprints, 1920s Sherlock Holmes could arrest you. And these pigs of today are not 1920s Sherlock Holmes or whatever. They are a lot more advanced than that. So did you leave prints? If you did, you're fucked. It's already over. That's the first question. Are you returning to the scene of the crime? If you are, don't ever be a criminal again. Are you remembering the small details, like the plates, the color of your hair, the clothes you're wearing? Can they use the clothes to incriminate you? Did you burn the clothes? I have burned some clothes in my life, not because of evidence. Well, yeah, because of robbery evidence. I'll just be honest. I have burned some sets of clothes in my life because they were evidence that would implicate me in a crime, because I displayed these clothes, and this was, decades ago. It's not something recent or current or even remotely soon, or it's been about 27 years. The clothes that I wore implicated me on some security cameras in a robbery, so I burned them. You know what I'm saying? I dropped the clothes that I was wearing out the window piece by piece across the city as I drove at 100 miles an hour in 35-mile-an-hour fucking streets and stuff at 4:15 in the morning, so I could get from the scene of the crime to my home really quick. I mean, really quick. It was like, I think, a 7-minute drive, something. But I traveled pretty far, like 5.5 miles or something like that. I went pretty fucking fast in the middle of the night, and I dropped my clothes all over the neighborhood. I'm talking all over the fucking neighborhood. It was probably obvious, but and then I burned the clothes that I was wearing. I got away scot-free on that motherfucker too. Scot-free. I was 15 years old. I'm not proud of this. It's just, I just did it. I fucking did that thing. I did that. My friends know. I can't hide the fact that I did that. I can't hide that. I have to be honest with the public. I did that.
Okay, with I
don't have to tell them, but I do tell them, because it's like, that's the guy that you're watching, Mr. Methamphetamine, Mr. Black Tar Heroin, Mr. Robber, Mr. I burned several sets of clothes in my life. That's just who you're paying attention to. It sucks. Streamers tend to be crazy. I'm not any different.
Gun. I'll shoot someone.
Ran away from home, stole license plates when I was 12.
But if you ask me to mess with DMV regulations, that's my line in the sand. That's not related to... I'll get back to the shootout, okay? So at 9:31 a.m., Grogan calls out that this is the car they're looking for, and all the FBI agents start to converge on their position. At this point, they're following the Monte Carlo through traffic, and there's enough cars between them that it's not suspicious. So the other agents are just trying to casually make their way through traffic, no blue lights or sirens or anything, to not give up the game. In a case of just bad luck, several of the agents were out of earshot of the radio when this call was made. Keep in mind, this was at a time when radios were much less effective than they are now, and were also relegated to the inside of the car. You couldn't bring them with you when you went in places. 2 agents were out using the bathroom when the call came in. Another one was out of service filling up the car with gas when the call came in. And another one was reporting to a bank telling them they're in the area if they see anything suspicious. So at the exact moment that the FBI needs as many people as they can on this, 4 vehicles are out of earshot. Eventually, 2 other FBI cars managed to get behind the Monte Carlo. I've already mentioned the one that Grogan.
I love stories like this. We used to make movies about this sort of shit when it would happen. You know, cops and robbers.
Dove is driving, that is the closest to the Monte Carlo. But then second behind Grogan and Dove is a car.
We glorify the criminals a lot more than we should.
Car with Hanton.
They often have bodies.
And Morales in it, and then behind them is a car with Agent Manazzi in it. So the 3 FBI vehicles are tailing the Monte Carlo, and it's not really sure what Maddox and Platt were thinking at this time. Maybe they saw the cop car and were just calling off the robbery for the day, or maybe they were driving to another bank, who knows. But eventually, the Monte Carlo starts to make its way into less and less crowded roadways until 3 pristine vehicles following them at every turn starts to become suspicious. At some point, it seems that Platt and Maddox caught onto this.
It's the fuzz. Cheese it.
Because they start performing nonsensical maneuvers to see if the 3 cars are still following them. Have you ever heard the
He has a lot of sound in his background.
saying that if you ever think you're being followed, just make 3 right turns and see if the car's still following you? Because if you make 3 right turns, you're going the opposite of the direction you were originally heading, right? So the Monte Carlo does that. It makes 3 right turns, and the FBI agents, knowing that they look suspicious, can't bear to let the car get away. Because think about it, right? They don't know anything about who the unknown bandits are in the Monte Carlo. They don't know their names. They don't have any data about them. They just know that they're willing to kill a lot of people, and that is definitely them in the car. So even if you look suspicious, even if you give yourself away, you can't afford to let these guys get away because who knows who they'll kill again. The Monte Carlo starts driving real slow, and then the 3 FBI agents behind them have to start driving real slow, and it's eventually apparent to everyone that the jig is up. Agent McNeil, who was catching up to them, just so happened to be driving the other direction of the convoy and said that as he drove by, he saw the passenger of the vehicle loading up a rifle. And given everything that the FBI knows about these guys, it is very unlikely that they will go away quietly. So then the FBI has to ask themselves another question.
Do we go down the wire with these guys, or do we just let them be and follow them?
If this is going to be a gunfight, where do we want it to happen at? Because South Miami is a very crowded area. There is a huge chance of catching someone in the crossfire. Eventually, the Monte Carlo turns onto 82nd Avenue in southern Miami. It's hard to see now because the area's been developed so much more since then, but at the time this was a much more relatively sparse area compared to the streets around it. A few streets to the east and you had a large neighborhood that had a school, and to the west you had a very busy highway. There's no telling what the men in the Monte Carlo would do if they got desperate, and the FBI knew it was now or never. They began to communicate this to each other over the radio, saying things like, "Now's the time, we have to go, let's do it," until finally Ben Grogan said over the radio, "Take them, felony car stop, let's do it." And Grogan threw the blue light into the dash of his unmarked car and initiated a traffic stop. As he does this, Grogan pulls the car all the way around to get in front of the Monte Carlo, and Hanton, seeing his play, pulls into the left lane, getting on the left side of the Monte Carlo, meaning now the vehicle is boxed in and can only drive off the road or stop. The Monte Carlo takes the third option and begins to speed up, hitting Grogan's car and trying to slam Hanton's car out of the way.
Cool, it's like he's describing an action movie.
This keeps up for a few seconds until Manazzi, seeing the play the other FBI agents are doing, speeds his car up that was previously third in line and rams the back of the Monte Carlo. This has the intended effect of causing the Monte Carlo to lose control.
Pit maneuver.
But because Hanton and the Monte Carlo were like hitting each other from the left and right, when the Monte Carlo gets knocked out of the way, it causes Hanton to lose control. And his car with Morales and Hanton veers off and runs into the concrete wall of a nearby substation. The Monte Carlo completely loses control and gets turned all the way around, now facing the north direction, the direction that the FBI and the Monte Carlo had previously come from. This gives the bandits a clear shot because now all of the FBI vehicles are to the south, and there is a wide open way to get onto the highway to the north and make an escape. Manasseh sees this and is determined to not let the men get away, so he uses the only thing at his disposal, the car he's driving, and rams it full speed into the side of the Monte Carlo. This pushes the car all the way across the road and through the driveway of a house off 82nd Avenue, where it stops by hitting a car parked in someone's driveway. Manasseh, coming out of the haze of the wreck he just caused, sees the door of the Monte Carlo open and a shotgun barrel stick out, while a rifle barrel from the passenger seat aims over the driver's seat, pointed directly at him. Manasseh panics and quickly throws open the door to get out of the way, and as he does, the first shots of the shootout are fired at 9:35 a.m. What would occur over the next 5 minutes is probably some of the most discussed 5 minutes, I would argue, in law enforcement or gunfight history. So why don't I just show you a stupid little diagram of all of this in the only stupid little way I know how. Look, if you wanted something that wasn't this, you wouldn't be here. Okay? So I'm not even going to be sorry about it. Let's just talk about it. So this direction is to the north, and this direction...
No, this is how you do this. This is how you should. This is how a teacher would do it. You could draw it on a chalkboard, or you could do it on a panda board. But this is what a teacher would do.
Is to the south. Originally, the convoy was driving this way, with McNeil driving the other direction. He's the guy who said he saw the guy in the passenger seat loading a rifle, was driving northbound. When Manasseh ran into Platt and Maddox,
he's got loud music going in the background. Do you hear it?
It caused Hanlon and Morales to spin out of control and hit a wall. Again, Platt and Maddox were now faced northbound, so as they tried to move, Manasseh hit them, and that's why their two cars were stopped here. McNeil, who had passed the convoy, did a U-turn to catch back up, and after the wreck happened, he pulled in right here to assist Manasseh. And Grogan and Dove, who were at the front and not in a car wreck, did a U-turn and stopped here in order to get out and try to apprehend the suspects. Now, before the wreck even happened, Manasseh had made a fatal error. It's not uncommon, especially if you're sitting in a vehicle and your gun belt's kind of in an uncomfortable position. It's not uncommon if you're expecting to use it to take the gun out and set it somewhere in the car. However, Manasseh had done that, not expecting himself to get into a car wreck. When they were originally driving this way and Manasseh hit Platt and Maddox from the rear end, as he made contact, it jarred his passenger door open and the gun flew in that direction. So Manasseh thought that his gun had flew out of the car when in reality it was just wedged between the passenger seat and the door. That's probably one of the reasons that Manasseh made the charge when he did. He didn't have a gun to stop these guys anymore, so he just used the car. So everyone came to a stop at 12201 Southwest 82nd Avenue, which I'll show actual demonstrations and street view and stuff like that.
Oh man, it came down to like a fucking suburban lawn.
Here now, so you can understand where my visions come from. As mentioned earlier, Manasseh saw the driver door open and a shotgun point towards Grogan and Dove. Over the driver's shoulder, he saw someone else point a rifle directly at him, and being unarmed, he had no other option than to open the driver door and roll out of the vehicle. From what we know now, Maddox was driving and Platts was in the passenger seat. As Manasseh rolls out of the car, Platts fires at him. Now, initially, Manasseh thought he had been hit by a shotgun blast in the back, but what had actually happened is one of the .223 rounds from Platt's Mini 14 rifle had fractured across the steel of Manasseh's vehicle and had hit him in a scatter across the back. A lot of the stuff I'm going to describe is going to be very scattered, but what you have to understand is all of this happened incredibly fast. If I'm describing one person or set of events and you're like, well, what's the other guy doing during this time?
This is 5 seconds.
Probably 3 seconds between the two different actions. So it's not like people were just standing around waiting for the next event to happen. I'm breaking down a lot of things that pretty much happened all at once. Just to clean up the board a little bit, Manazi, again thinking that his gun had fallen from outside of the vehicle, crawls in this direction behind the car and looks in the center of the street where he thinks his gun might have fallen out at. Manazi can't find it, and as he's continuing to be shot at, Manazi eventually makes his way around to a wall that is running along the west side of the road. I'll go ahead and draw the wall here just so you remember it's there. Manazi would take cover behind this wall for the remainder of the gunfight. Now, a lot of people write Manazi off for this. They'll say, this guy's a coward.
That's
How
not
could
fair.
he hide behind a wall while his friends are being shot
he did what he
at or
should have
whatever.
done. This is how they're trained. This is what we want them to do. Go for cover. If you don't have a gun, then you're not in the fight. Just go for cover. Hold until whatever is happening ends.
I want to remind you, he doesn't have a gun,
What?
and they have a lot of gun. So I don't really know what you want him to do. He didn't have a spare in his vehicle. He didn't know of any of the other officers having a spare. Should they have brought more? Sure, but now is not the time to have hindsight. And I also want to keep in mind that the whole reason they were stopped in the first place is because Manazi, completely unarmed, decided to ram his car directly into them. Also, I would like to see you being shot in the face by a rifle over and over, still try to find your gun in the middle of the street before you seek cover. There was another incident that happened when the cars came to a stop as well. So Ben Grogan always wore glasses. He had these thick rim glasses that allegedly it was hard for him to see without. I've heard it debated as to how blind he was without his glasses. Some said he couldn't see a thing. Others said that things were just kind of blurry. Who knows? But either way, when the car slammed to a stop, Ben's glasses flew off of his face. Being unable to recover them, Grogan and Dove step out of the vehicle, and Grogan yells, "FBI, you're under arrest." At the same time this is happening, McNeil moves up to Mazazi's car to give him cover as Mazazi makes his way to the wall. At the same time this is happening, Morellis and Hanlon move up to help their boys. Hanlon makes his way over to Grogan and Dove, while Morellis moves over to help McNeil. Keep in mind there are gunshots flying in the midst of all of this, and about 20 seconds has passed, maybe 15, a very short amount of time. McNeil is laying over the hood of the car, shooting his revolver, but he is laying so close to the hood that he has to hold the revolver sideways as he fires 4 shots. And if you're wondering why it was pressed so hard into the hood, keep in mind that Platt is still firing rifle rounds in his direction. Morellis gets over to the back of McNeil's car, and as he turns the corner, he sees that McNeil is firing at the top of the hood. Where's that shotgun at? Morellis has his gun trained around the front of Maddox and Platt's vehicle, but as he turns the corner, he sees that he's aiming right at McNeil. Not wanting to accidentally fire towards McNeil, Morales lifts his gun like this for a moment. As soon as he does, a bullet flies from Platt's rifle directly towards Morales' chest. However, because of the position he moved his arm into, the rifle round instead hits his arm, the bullet fracturing through his forearm and effectively mutilating it. Morales thinks that he has run into the back of McNeil's truck because he's so hyped up and amped up from being in a gunfight that he's just running and then something stops him all at once, not realizing he's been shot. It wasn't until he fell to the ground and looked at his arm, something he would describe as a mangled piece of roadkill that he didn't even recognize as himself. So for the time being, Morales is lying somewhere between McNeil and Mazazu's car, just almost dying. Because if his arm being decimated wasn't bad enough, a fragment round at some point sparks off the ground and hits him in the side of the head, injuring his temporal artery. It would be described that every time his heart pumped, blood would shoot 8 feet out the side of his head. So yeah, Morales isn't doing so good, so we'll come back to him in a minute. I should also mention Morales was the only one here equipped with a shotgun. Everyone else had a handgun, either revolvers or a 9mm. It was also around this stage that 2 agents, Gilbert and Ron, had arrived from the northbound direction. The 2 of them were part of the stakeout and had just got to the meetup late. So they came and parked on this side of the road and provided covering fire throughout the rest of the shootout. And again, they're equipped with a revolver and a 9mm, so there's not a ton they can do to punch through the hull of the car, but you know, it's the thought that counts when it comes to support fire. Another reason they parked here where they did is because the only avenue of exit these two have is if they take off towards the neighborhood for the north. But there's no way the two of them could make a break for it without Gilbert and Ron seeing. So Platt is still in the passenger seat firing this direction, and as mentioned earlier, Maddox is in the driver's seat aiming backwards towards these three. Ben Grogan, who mind you is at least partially blind during this whole thing because he lost his glasses, is credited as getting the first hit as one of his handgun rounds hits Maddox in the right hand, with a fragment from another shot, or someone else's over here, also striking Maddox in the cheek. Morellis, starting to come out of his haze, looks over at his left arm, which at this point is attached by one strip of skin on his forearm, and in frustration and delirium, he throws the useless arm out of the way and grabs his shotgun, which is a problem because as a pump action, you kind of need, you know, two hands to pump it, but he hasn't got that far yet. Platts eventually realizes they're going to die if they don't move quick, and also they are pushed too close against the car that is parked here to open the door. So Platts shatters the passenger window and begins to crawl out of it. As Platts is climbing out of the passenger window, facing away from the gunfight, Dove would fire a round that is probably the most debated shot in law enforcement history, if not just like defense shooting history ever. Dove,
Really?
standing from about 15 yards out, fired a shot of his 9mm, which was shooting a 115 grain hollow point round. Platts was pushing himself out of the window in a position similar to this, and Dove's round came and hit his right bicep before crossing over into his chest and lodging itself in his lung about 2 inches from his heart. Visibly, Platts winced at this and lost his footing for a second. This was a remarkable shot on a moving target from 15 yards in the midst of all the gunfight and confusion. And you would think, oh, someone shot in the chest like that should hypothetically be a kill shot. And you'd think that, wouldn't you? I mean, at the very least enough to get him to quit shooting back, but again, we'll get to that. Platt stumbles his way over to the front of these cars and at some point is hit again in the thigh and in the foot. At the same time, the two agents over here see Platts getting out and fire more shots to him, one of them hitting him in the right arm and in the chest. The right arm, it would later be found, severed his radial bone. At this point, Platts had fired so many shots from his Ruger Mini 14 that he needed to reload it, meaning he had fired all 30 rounds. And as they started shooting at him while he was mid-reload, he pulled his revolver and fired 3 shots towards them in order to buy time to reload his rifle. So at this point, Platt has been hit 5 times, with one of them being a very severe injury, yet he's still going. We don't know when this happened because Maddox kind of disappears from the fight for a while, but at some point Maddox followed Platt's idea, realizing that was the only way out of the car, and Maddox crawled out of the car as well. For now, we'll just assume that he's hunkered down in here somewhere. At some point a little earlier in the fight, when McNeil was firing his revolver sideways over the hood of the car, one of Platt's rounds struck him between the pointer and middle finger. The rifle round ripped through the top of his hand, and for anyone else, this would mean losing your gun. But according to Morellis, McNeil was shot, jerked his hand back, looked at his hand for a second, and then switched over to his left hand as he attempted to reload and keep shooting. It's at this point McNeil realizes he can't be useful trying to operate his revolver just left-handed because, you know, reloads like that are kind of difficult. So he begins to make his way back to his car to get a shotgun out of the back. As McNeil makes his way over to his car, he is shot by Platt, and the round goes into his lung and damages his spine. McNeil falls to the ground, temporarily paralyzed, and for the rest of the gunfight, he would lay there in the street. Dove, to get more cover, because there's not a ton of cover on the right side of this vehicle, you know, in line with them, Dove moves over to the left side of the vehicle where Grogan is. Hanlon said he never saw Dove move around the back of the car, and because it's not really realistic for him to move around the front of the car, Dove probably crawled through the car itself to get over to the left-hand side. Around the same time that McNeil was hit, Platt would fire a couple rounds that seriously injured Dove and Grogan. Dove especially, who was shot in the hip, was unable to move for the rest of the gunfight. There's another factor happening here that isn't really accounted for yet. So in the midst of the smoke from the cars colliding with each other and all of the gun smoke that is now floating up in the air, plus the fact that they are facing the east in the morning, so the sun is rising over here, all of the agents on this side, particularly the two that are providing support fire from up here, can't see anything. They can make out Platt's when he moved around to the front of the car, but for all of this angle, it was a very sunny day in Miami. It's just like a blaze of orange, and what they can see is gun smoke. So at some point, these two lose sight of Platt, and they have no idea where he went. The first person who saw where Platt went would be Hanlon, who poked his head out to the right to see that Platt was walking straight towards him. Platt is walking along this line as he shoots and hits Hanlon in the hand, causing Hanlon to lose his weapon. Platt, now standing near the car, not knowing where Dove and Grogan are, fires several rounds around the rear end of the vehicle in an attempt to kill Hanlon. A couple of the rounds hit Hanlon in the leg, and several fracture and cause him to receive injuries all over his body. Thankfully, none were lethal. However, the same couldn't be said, sadly, for Grogan and Dove, because as Platt is standing at the rear of the vehicle right after he fired the shots at Hanlon, Platt looks over the vehicle and sees Grogan making his way around to the rear, to which Platt fires a round through the vehicle, which would strike Grogan in the chest, killing him. It was at this point that the two agents up here could see where Platt was now after, hearing the new gunfire and all, but they couldn't shoot because shooting would mean they're firing directly at Dove. So they just begin to scream and yell for Dove to turn around, that Platt's right there with them, but sadly, Dove is in no condition to respond. Not only has he been hit in the hip, but as the crime scene would later reveal, his gun had been shot as well. So Platt, assuming Hanlon dead and knowing Grogan dead, moves all the way around to this side of the vehicle to find Dove facing the other direction, again thinking that they're still over here. And a lot of people...
Why did these people do this?
We'll hear that and be like, oh, we couldn't hear the gunshot happen right here. Normally, like, stories from people in gunfights, they get zoned out, they can't really hear anything, they can't really gauge distance and stuff like that. It's not far-fetched to believe he wouldn't have realized Platt was standing over here, especially considering the condition he was in, having been shot in the hip, and when Platt moved around the vehicle, Dove was bent over his handgun, trying to take out the magazine to try to get the weapon operating, but again, the gun was shot, so it wasn't happening. So Platt moved behind Dove and shot him twice in the head, executing him. Another factor that happened in the midst of all this that also factored in as to why these two probably had trouble seeing where Platt was and all that is at least twice in the midst of this gunfight, two civilian vehicles just drove through. I'm not kidding. This doesn't really do it justice because, like, I'm making everything purposefully big so that you can see it on a diagram, but like you can see in a picture how there was like excess road over to the left. In the middle of the gunfight with bullets flying, with people literally lying dead in the street, like they're no self-awareness, like I have to get to work on time. Yeah, so that was happening, and probably partially contributed to the reason that they lost track of Platt in the midst of all this. A couple minutes have passed now since the gunfight had started, and Morellis was starting to come to his senses. So at this point, Morellis was still over here kind of at the back of McNeil's vehicle, and he saw Platt standing over here in the midst of the carnage, and Morellis didn't know who was alive, who was dead. He just saw Platt and knew the score probably wasn't great for these guys. So Morellis took his shotgun, and he laid it on the ground underneath McNeil's vehicle and fired it one-handed. And it turns out that the buckshot he fired out of the shotgun hit Platt in both of his feet. However, Platt, who has now been hit at least 7 times, if not 8 times at this point, flinches a little bit and just keeps walking. Morales, to get a better view, crawls around more to the front of McNeil's vehicle and notices that not only is Platt at the car now, but Maddox is as well. And as a matter of fact, Maddox is sitting in the passenger seat of the car as Platt has moved to sit in the car himself. And Morales puts two and two together and figures out, oh, they're trying to drive away. Because think about it, Platt and Maddox can't run on foot, especially not when they're bleeding out and there's cops everywhere. This car's too far away, and they can't get to these cars because of these two. So the only car that still has a way to get out is Ben Grogan's car. And even though Hanlon is still alive on the ground, he probably wouldn't be if Platt manages to start it up and back the car over him, which would be the only way he could get out of here. Morales realizes that he has to do something. And even though he only has one hand and a two-handed shotgun, he makes it work. Morales lays up against the back of McNeil's vehicle and puts the buttstock of the gun between his legs, grabs the pump, and racks it before switching to lay the shotgun over the back of McNeil's car, fires, and then repeats the process again, firing 5 rounds at the vehicle until the shotgun's empty. Now, while he was shooting out the window and it seems debris were hitting the two men, none of the buckshot rounds made enough contact to do any real damage. In response to this, Platt steps out of the vehicle and fires 3 shots at Morales. All of the rounds hit around Morales and some fragments make contact with him, but Platt doesn't land any direct hits. At the same time this is happening, a couple of off-duty police officers heard the commotion and show up to help. And one of them comes over to help out McNeil. And as they're dragging him away, they don't know who anyone is. And none of the FBI agents are wearing uniform because they were all plainclothes. So the guy dragging away McNeil asks if Morales is a good guy or a bad guy. And through the delirium, McNeil says he's a good guy. The reason that the agent dragging McNeil asks that is because Morales was having a one-man war. Now, the way Morales tells this is very foggy. Like, he didn't know what was going on, that he was kind of in a daze, couldn't see straight, was about to lose consciousness. Everyone else describes that Morales was on a warpath. He was laying next to the car, bleeding out of his head, literally shooting blood out of his head. His left arm looked completely gone, and he was screaming, swearing, saying, "I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna rip you apart, I'm gonna tear you to pieces." And these guys still can't see what's going on. They just see Morales screaming. This off-duty cop shows up at the scene, has no idea who this crazy guy is shouting about killing people. But McNeil says he's cool, so they let it fly. Morales even mentioned later that if he had just looked over and saw 2 people who he didn't know were police officers carrying McNeil off, he probably would have shot them too. Morales says that in this moment, he realized he was going to die. He had lost so much blood that he was on the brink of passing out. He didn't know how bad the injury to his head was. For all he knew, his brains were falling out. So Morales knew that he was going to die. And in the last seconds of life that he had left, he decided that he is taking Platt and Maddox with him. This is perfect timing because at this point, Maddox has been hit in enough arteries that he is becoming very groggy and starting to come out of it. And despite all of Platt's rage and this murder tirade he went on, it seems he is getting a bit more sluggish as well. And especially because Platt thinks that he just took care of Morales, now's the perfect time. So Morales stands up, pulls his revolver, and aims a shot directly at Maddox. He fires, and it seems to be a miss. So Morales says to himself, oh, I just have to walk closer. So just in the open, he fires again, about 8 yards from the car. The shot hits Platt in the forehead. Although the round was deflected and it just grazed him, it was enough to visibly watch Platt jerk back in the vehicle. Morales keeps walking. The second shot hits Maddox in the face. Again, a deflection. So he walks and fires again. The next shot hits Maddox in the face. He walks and fires again. The next shot hit Maddox in the
How many
face.
times
this
is
one
this
going
fucking
through
asshole gonna get shot in the face and walk?
his skull, killing him.
It's like a Blizzard game.
Finally, with one bullet left, he walks all the way up to the front of the car, leans his hand through the passenger window that's broken, puts the barrel square against Platt's chest, and fires. The force of the round instantly driving Platt to unconsciousness, to which he would be dead mere seconds later. Gilbert and Ron, seeing what had happened, run over to Morales, telling him that it's over, that he got it, and Morales, after all his years of FBI training, takes his revolver, puts it in his holster, and shuts the latch. In the midst of the gunfight, even Gilbert was hit by a fractured round, meaning Ron was the only person in this entire scenario who wasn't hit by gunfire. And according to the coroner's report, Maddox was hit at least 6 times, and Platt was hit at least 12. Thankfully, McNeil's paralysis was only temporary. While he did suffer damage to his spine, he was able to walk again. Other than Dove and Grogan, all the FBI agents survived. And with the bullet that killed Platt and the symbolic holstering of Morales' revolver, the shootout ended at 9:40 a.m. after just 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, direct estimates aren't known because of the helicopters that landed and all of the EMS crews that came in, but based on shell casings, anywhere from 140 to 150 rounds were fired. And considering that out of 10 people, 9 had to seek medical aid, the situation had a 90% casualty rate. It's easy to see why this is a situation that changed the FBI and law enforcement forever, and with good reason. With this, the murderous rage of Platt and Maddox finally came to an end, but it extracted a heavy toll, as Grogan and Dove lay dead with them. Near the end of the shootout, there were hundreds of responders from EMS, fire, and police crews around the area, and as soon as it was declared safe, they immediately rushed in and began providing aid. Miraculously, Morales would actually not lose his left arm. It would take years of surgery and therapy to get there, but eventually he regained the use of his left arm. Because of his spinal damage, McNeil would suffer pretty persistent pain throughout the rest of his life, and quite tragically would die in 2004 of esophageal cancer. Quite tragically, he might have known about the cancer earlier had the spot the tumor developed in not been the same area that he was already experiencing back pain, so he didn't recognize it until it was too late. Tragically, the DMV inquiry that Grogan had made previously, if you'll remember when he had the agents drive around and collect the license plate numbers of various F-150 trucks, tragically, that report was waiting on his desk on the morning of April the 11th. And it turns out in that report that one of the license plates that Agent Hanlon had written down, just by coincidence, was Maddox's white Ford F-150. So who knows if that would have changed anything, right? Who knows if they would have found that picture and passed that along to Jose to confirm that this was their guy or not? Who knows if that would have changed anything, if it could have changed anything. But it might have. And it was tragic that Grogan would never make his way back to that desk again. And despite only one of the officers, Ron Reisner, not being injured that day, everyone made a full recovery. The events of that day have been and will continue to be debated probably forever. This caused massive re-evaluation of FBI equipment and procedures. And one of the most talked about points from all of this is the shot Jerry Dove took that went into the lung of Platt. An autopsy would later confirm that when that bullet went into Platt's lung, for all intents and purposes, Platt was dead. Blood was rapidly filling up inside of his lung, and realistically, he had maybe 6-7 minutes to live before he killed over. As a matter of fact, a blood trail analysis would theorize that Platt lost up to half of the blood in his body before he actually died. So this caused a really big debate within law enforcement. How dead is dead enough? Because even if that shot effectively killed him, keep in mind, no one was dead when that shot was fired, meaning the dead man had enough time to kill 2 agents. This has led to years of debates in research and development departments. How do we make a bullet that effectively eliminates a threat? How much stopping power can we realistically put into a bullet? The years of development that would follow this would lead to the production of the .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge, which to this day, to my knowledge, is still the primary round used by pretty much every law enforcement agency in the United States. Comparing that to the 9mm round, it's not a ton of difference, but enough to justify however many billions of dollars we spent on this. According to the FBI, the ballistic difference was pertinent enough that it required the United States switch over to it. And I'll leave the particulars about stopping power and what bullet's more effective and which bullet's the best for self-defense and blah, blah, blah. I'll leave that up to people who care far more than I do. But all I'll say that from the reading I know, and as this story should show, the best bullet to stop someone is another bullet. In most cases, if a shooting goes well, you never hear about it. Everything did the job that it was supposed to. But if a shooting goes wrong, then there needs to be a problem, regardless if the problem exists or not. I think it's very apparent at like 5 different points in this story that just because you think someone is dead doesn't mean they actually are. And where that was especially apparent is with all of the revolvers that the FBI had to use during the shootout. There was already a push happening to begin to give officers auto-loading pistols that worked off of magazines instead of old school, more traditional revolvers. And this was the kick in the pants to make that standard. And from this, there was no department that began to continue to issue revolvers when things that could have 3-4 times the ammunition capacity were just as easy to carry. This changed officer training and how they conduct their drills. It changed like officers' requirements to wear body armor, the requirements around body armor itself. If there is a modern standard when it comes to use of force in law enforcement, it probably tracks its way back to the Miami shootout in some way. There was even pushback on the legal side through this. For a while, the Florida State Prosecutor's Office was threatening to file charges on Morales for excessive force, saying his final shots at point-blank range were unjustified. But I think given everything else we've seen in this case, I wouldn't be convinced these guys were dead unless they blew up. But eventually that matter was dropped, and all of the government reaction to this case was nothing but in favor of the agents involved. Yeah. The FBI created the Medal of Valor to award Morales, and himself, as well as the agents who were killed, had buildings within the FBI's institution named after them, which eventually all of the agents who were there that day were given the Medal of Valor. The FBI would use this event for training in years to come, and even produced a educational documentary / informational video called Firefight, where they reenacted a lot of the events and had Morales provide like talking head interview segments for it. And it's really funny because this was years after the shootout. So Morales was working undercover at the time, so he couldn't show his face during the talking head segments. So anytime it cuts to him, it looks like he's about to be executed. Because he has to hide his face, and it looks like he's about to die. It seems that after this event, Morales would go on to live a very fruitful and thorough life.
Very good.
Not only within the realms of the FBI in doing things like giving educational briefs about what happened during the shootout, or becoming an instructor in like firearms training, but he also just became an advocate for things like PTSD and other like psychological or physical problems he suffered with afterwards, and became a big talking point for agents and soldiers, police officers, whatever, who experience this kind of thing, saying that it's okay to not be okay all the time. Also, shortly after the shooting, while Morales was still in the hospital, he found out that his wife, who was also an agent, was expecting their first child. And from there, they've had several more, and it seems that Morales has made the most of the time that, against all odds, he was given. In a segment taken from the end of his book, Ed Morales says, John 15:13 says, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." When a person lays down their life to save yours, you should not squander your life. The best way to honor the person who died for you is to live your life to the fullest, not to squander it. I have tried to do that. There were a lot of things that went wrong in the Miami shootout, either that be unpreparedness, or either that be just the ferocity of Platt and Maddox in their final moments. But one thing that did not go wrong was the bravery of the agents who were there that day. I talk a lot about the FBI on this channel, I talk a lot about problems I have with things certain agents have done or the institution as a whole. But in this moment, it was people who saw something that needed to be stopped and were willing to put their life on the line to stop it. Even the guy who didn't have a gun, and even that guy tried to do something about it, after he used his car and body to stop the robbers. Other than that guy, there was never a moment where people made progress away from the danger. The whole time, it was them closing them. It was them making sure that if anyone got hurt, it was going to be them. And who knows what would have happened if they would have let the bandits get away, if their crime spree continued. How many more bodies would be added to the list? It's an interesting case because of how bizarre it is. If you start at Platt and Maddox's wife, the case goes on for several years, right? And it's interesting to see the evil around it, but something that stands out so much to me is just the valor of the people in question. And in the midst of all the terrible and in the midst of all the depressing, there's no upside stories I like to cover. It's cool every now and then to get to see a moment like that, where people are who you want them to be. And I think that's pretty neat. And if you thought it was pretty neat, and if you gained any information from this video at all, which would be surprising, then I certainly appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for watching. The Miami-Dade shootout has always been kind of an infamous story in the realm of law enforcement. And like growing up as someone who was into firearms, it got talked about all the time when it came to like stopping power. People would say that like 9mm was a stupid round because of what happened in the 1986 shootout, implying that ammo has not developed at all since 1986, but whatever. It's just always been a story I've been interested in, so it was fun to go down the rabbit hole, learn the specifics, and learn why this story has the reputation it does, which I think is well earned. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for the support on everything. Merry Christmas, by the way. I'm recording this a little after Christmas, or at least this part of it a little after Christmas. And Happy New Year's. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I had a video that I wanted to release before year's end, but I got halfway through it and it was already like 2-3 hours. So that one's gonna have to be a January upload, I think. Hopefully, we'll see. But yeah, I know a lot of the uploads lately have been kind of shorter. I know that I haven't been my very best for you, so to speak. But hopefully this was a good one, and hopefully I
love this one. It was
get
so
back
good.
into the swing of the ridiculously long uploads that torture me, but you guys love to watch for some reason. But no, really, thank you all for the support. It means the world. Thank you for the support on everything on the charity and whatnot. I think there's still a few days left to get in on the charity merch, all the profits of which go to the ARP, which I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about at this point. But I think there's a couple days to get in on that if you want. But thank you all so much for the support you've shown thus far. That should do it for now. But I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
I saw what people... If you don't go for cover, you lose. You die. So, I am going to go to bed. I fucking love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Got a lot of gaming done. We'll be back this evening for more. Thank you so much. And you've been watching Skycat Live. I'm going to bed. I'm a full-time variety gamer all day, every day. Put me on in the background. Come click on the cast face to donate. Come to my Twitch or my YouTube. Give me a like, sub, or a follow. Thank you for all the likes, subs, and the follows that you've been giving me lately. I love you guys. Thank you. And this 9.5 hour session, or whatever it was, 13 hours actually, I think, was recorded, and I'm going to stop the video now, but I will place this video, this entire session on my channel, where I have thousands of videos on my channel, so come check out my channel on YouTube. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to stop the video here.